Hey you guys. So we've been reading Howl's Moving Castle and we're just following Sophie around trying to find a way to break Howl and Castlefar's curse. When Howl was satisfied that Michael had forgotten all about how much or little he charged people in Port Haven, he took them out into the yard to help them with the king's spell. Sophie creaked to her feet and hobbled to the bench. The spell was clear enough, but Howl's scrawled remarks defeated her. "I've never seen such writing," she grumbled to the human skull. "Does he use a pen or a poker?" She sorted eagerly through every scrap of paper on the bench and examined the powders and liquids in the crooked jars. "Yes, let's admit it," she told the skull. "I snoop, and I have my proper reward. I can find out how to cure foul pests and abate whooping cough, raise a wind, and remove hairs from the face. If Martha had found this lot, she'd still be at Miss Fairfax's." Howl, it seemed to Sophie, went and examined all the things she had moved when he came in from the yard. But that seemed to be only restlessness. He seemed not to know what to do himself after that. Sophie heard him roving up and down during the night. He was only about an hour in the bathroom the next morning. He seemed not to be able to contain himself, while Michael put on his best plum velvet suit, ready to go to the palace in Kingsbury, and the two of them wrapped the bulky spell up in golden paper. The spell must have been surprisingly light for its size. Michael could carry it on his own easily, with both arms wrapped around it. Howl turned the knob over the door, read down for him, and sent him out into the street among the painted houses. "They're expecting it," Howl said. "You should only have to wait most of the morning. Tell them a child could work it. Show them. And then when you come back, I'll have a spell of power for you to get to work on. So long." He shut the door and roved around the room again. "My feet itch," he said suddenly. "I'm going for a walk in the hills. Tell Michael the spell I promised him is on the bench, and there's for you to keep busy with." Sophie found a gray and scarlet suit, as fancy as the blue and silver one, dropped into her lap from nowhere. Howl meanwhile picked up his guitar from its corner, turned the doorknob green down, and stepped out among the scudding heather above Market Chipping. "His feet itch," grumbled Calcifer. There was a fog down in Port Haven. Calcifer was low among his logs, moving uneasily this way and that to avoid the drips in the chimney. "How does he think I feel, stuck in this damp grate like this?" "Then you'll have to give me a hint at least about how to break your contract," Sophie said, shaking out the gray and scarlet suit. "Goodness, you're a fine suit, even if you are a bit worn. Built to pull in the girls, aren't you?" "I have given you a hint," Calcifer fizzed. "Then you'll have to give it to me again. I didn't catch it," Sophie said as she laid the suit down and hobbled to the door. "If I give you a hint and tell you it's a hint, it will be information. I'm not allowed to give that," Calcifer said. "Where are you going?" "To do something I didn't dare do until they were both out," Sophie said, and she twisted the square knob over the door until the black blob pointed downward, and then she opened the door. There was nothing outside. It was neither black nor gray nor white. It was not thick or transparent. It did not move. It had no smell and no feel. And when Sophie put a very cautious finger out into it, it was neither hot nor cold. It felt of nothing. It seemed utterly and completely nothing. "What is this?" she asked Calcifer. Calcifer was as interested as Sophie. His blue face was leaning right out of the grate to see the door. He had forgotten the fog. "I don't know," he whispered. "I only maintain it. All I know is that it's on the other side of the castle that no one can walk around, and it feels quite far away." "It feels beyond the moon," said Sophie. She shut the door and turned the knob green downward. She hesitated a minute and then started to hobble to the stairs. "He's locked it," said Calcifer. "He told me to tell you if you tried to snoop again." "Oh," said Sophie. "What has he got up there?" "I have no idea," said Calcifer. "I don't know anything about upstairs. If you only knew how frustrating it is. I can't even really see outside the castle, only enough to see what direction I'm going in." Sophie feeling equally frustrated, sat down and began mending the gray and scarlet suit. Michael came in quite soon after that. "The king saw me at once," he said. He He looked around the room. His eyes went to the empty corner where the guitar usually stood. "Oh no," he said. "Not the lady friend again. I thought she'd fallen in love with him and it was all over days ago. What's keeping her?" Calcifer fizzed wickedly. "You got the signs wrong. Heartless Howl is finding this lady rather tough. He decided to leave her alone for a few days to see if that would help. That's all." "Oh, bother," said Michael. "That's bound to mean trouble. And here I was hoping Howl was almost sensible again." Sophie banged the suit down on her knees. "Really," she said, "how can you both talk like that about such utter wickedness? At least, I suppose I can't blame Calcifer since he's an evil demon. But you, Michael—" "I don't think I'm evil," Calcifer protested. "But I'm not calm about it, if that's what you think," Michael said. "If you knew the trouble we've had because Howl will keep falling in love like this. We've had lawsuits and suitors with swords and mothers with rolling pins and fathers and uncles with kugels and aunts. Aunts are terrible. They go for you with hat pins. But the worst is when the girl finds out where Howl lives and turns up at the door, crying and miserable. Howl goes out through the back door, and Calcifer and I have to deal with them all." "I hate the unhappy ones," Calcifer said. "They drip on me. I'd rather have them angry." "Now let's get this straight," Sophie said, clenching her fist knobbly and red satin. "What does Howl do to these poor females? I was told he ate their hearts and took their souls away." Michael laughed uncomfortably. "Then you must come from market shipping. Howl sent me down there to blacken his name when we first set up the castle. I said that sort of thing. It's what aunts usually say. It's only true in a manner of speaking." "Howl's very fickle," said Calcifer. "He's only interested until the girl falls in love with him, and then he can't be bothered with her." "But he can't rest until he's made her love him," Michael said eagerly. "You can't get any sense out of him until he has. I always look forward to the time when the girls fall for him. Things get better then." "Until they track him down," said Calcifer. "You'd think he'd have the sense to give him a false name," Sophie said scornfully. The scorn was to hide the fact that she was feeling somewhat foolish. "Excuse me." "Oh, he always does," Michael said. "He loves giving false names and posing as things. He does it even when he's not courting girls. Haven't you noticed that he's the sorcerer Jenkins in Port Haven and the wizard Pendragon in Kingsbury, as well as horrible Howl in the castle?" Sophie had not noticed, which made her feel even more foolish still. And feeling foolish made her angry. "Well, I still think he's wicked, going around making poor girls unhappy," she said. "It's heartless and pointless." "He's made that way," said Calcifer. Michael pulled a three-legged stool up to the fire and sat on it while Sophie sewed, telling her of Howl's conquests and some of the trouble that had happened afterward. Sophie muttered at the fine suit. She still felt very foolish. "So, you ate hearts, did you, suit? Why do aunts put things so oddly when they talk about their nieces? Probably fancied you themselves, my good suit. How would you feel with a raging aunt after you, eh?" As Michael told her the story of a particular aunt he had in mind, it occurred to Sophie that it was probably just as well the rumors of Howl had come to market shipping in those words. She could imagine a strong-minded girl like Letty otherwise getting very interested in Howl and ending up very unhappy. Michael had just suggested lunch, and Calcifer, as usual, had groaned when Howl flung the door open and came in more discontented than ever. "Something to eat?" said Sophie. "No," said Howl. "Hot water in the bathroom, Calcifer." He stood moodily in the bathroom door a moment. "Sophie, have you tidied this shelf of spells in there by any chance?" Sophie felt more foolish than ever. Nothing would have possessed her to admit that she had gone through all those packets and jars looking for pieces of girl. "I haven't touched a thing," she replied virtuously as she went to get the frying pan. "I hope you didn't," Michael said uneasily as the bathroom door slammed. Rinsings and gushings came from the bathroom while Sophie fried lunch. "He's using a lot of hot water," Calcifer said from under the pan. "I think he's tinting his hair. I hope you left the hair spells alone. For a plain man with mud-colored hair, he's terribly vain about his looks." "Oh, shut up," snapped Sophie. "I put everything back just where I found it." She was so cross that she emptied the pan of eggs and bacon over Calcifer. Calcifer, of course, ate them with enormous enthusiasm and much flaring and gobbling. Sophie fried more over the spitting flames. She and Michael ate them. They were clearing away, and Calcifer was running his blue tongue around his purple lips when the bathroom door crashed open and Howl shot out, wailing with despair. "Look at this," he shouted. "Look at it! What has that one-woman force of chaos done to these spells?" Sophie and Michael whirled around and looked at Howl. His hair was wet, but apart from that, neither of them could see anything different. "If you mean me," Sophie began, "I do mean you. Look!" Howl shrieked. He sat down with a thump on the three-legged stool and jabbed at his wet head with his finger. "Look, survey, inspect. My hair is ruined. Look, I look like a pan of bacon and eggs." Michael and Sophie bent nervously over Howl's head. It seemed the usual flaxen color right to the roots. The only difference might have been a slight, very slight, trace of red. Sophie found that agreeable. It reminded her a little of the color of her own hair should have been. "I think it's very nice," she said. "Nice?" screamed Howl. "You would. You did it on purpose. You couldn't rest until you made me miserable too. Look at it. It's ginger. I shall have to hide until it's grown out." And he spread his arms out passionately. "Despair!" he yelled. "Anguish! Horror!" The room turned dim. Huge, cloudy, human-looking shapes bellied up in all four corners and advanced on Sophie and Michael, howling as they came. The howls began as a moaning horror and went up to despairing brays and then up again to screams of pain and terror. Sophie pressed her hands to her ears, but the screams pressed through her hands, louder and louder still, more horrible every second. Calcifer shrank hurriedly down into the grate and flickered his way under his lowest log. Michael grabbed Sophie by her elbow and dragged her to the door. He spun the knob to blew down, kicked the door open, and got them both out into the street in Port Haven as fast as he could. And that's where we'll stop for today.